Hello and welcome to the Cube Talk Show. I'm your host, Joe Barbieri, and this is a show about money, so we cover many aspects of money. And today we have Adrian Herschell from Plutus Consulting Group. He's a senior consultant, and we're going to talk about business preparation. So, Adrian, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
So just as a start, tell us about your background and about the company.
Sure. First, let me thank you for having me on the show. I've been looking forward to it. My background, I have a business degree from Ivy, University of Western Ontario, and 30 years of senior management experience in family-owned businesses and large public companies. Many years ago, I was recruited to take over a bankrupt business, and a family had bought it. And we revived it and resuscitated it and doubled the sales, and it's profitable and it's alive today. After that, I went to work for a very large Canadian business as vice president and took it public, participated in taking it public. And then I ran a family-owned business again across North America. So I have a good understanding of what corporate life is like and what the dynamics are in a family-owned business. When I left corporate life, I felt I wanted to start giving back, and still wanted to keep my hand in and stay active, so we started a consulting practice, and it evolved into Plutus Consulting Group, and there's 4 senior consultants as part of the practice, and each of us with an area of specialty, but we collaborate together with large clients and small.
So who is your client?
Well, everything from startups to medium-sized businesses. We did one project for a very large company, but our core client would be a medium-sized business that has had some traction and had some success, but for one reason or another isn't getting the results that they were hoping to get. And we can go in and do a diagnostics and find out what's holding them back.
Okay.
Okay.
So, so this is more. So it's not so much about the person who just has an idea and that's it. Well, versus is that something?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Entrepreneurs are the lifeblood of tomorrow's business. So we've done startups and we'll do startups. If a person has, so let me back up one step. 10 years ago, 10% of the Canadian working force was self-employed. Today it's 15%. There's been a 50% increase in people starting businesses, starting practices, starting consulting, and a lot of those people either migrate to it because they are fed up with the corporate world or don't see the same opportunities that were there for them, or they have a passion for something that they really want to make a reality. But the hard, cold facts are that a lot of them don't do well in business, and our process would lay a better foundation for their success. And that's really why we sort of help the entrepreneurs get started, to give them a good foundation to make sure that the idea will germinate into a business.
So, so if somebody were to come to you right now and say, I have a company, it's not doing what I want it to do.
Yes.
What's the next stage for you after that? Okay,
so even though it's an existing business, we would, I referred to the 7 stages.
Okay.
Can I expand on that for a sec?
7 stages, yeah.
So as part of differentiating Plutus from other consulting companies, we invested a lot of time and energy and money in some diagnostic packages that are evolutionary. And we hooked up with a colleague in the United States, a professor at one of the universities that had analyzed over 500 businesses across a number of countries, and he came up with common elements that all businesses go through. And we honed it down to 7 stages to make it easily understood by business people and also executionable, so that to get through the stage we know exactly what you have to do to move on to the next stage, and they're sequential. You can't skip. You have to lay the right foundation. It's like building a house. You can't put the 4th story on until the basement's structured. So, so we invested in that. We collaborated with them, and we use that as one of the tools either to diagnose an existing business or to help an entrepreneur to start the right way. So the first stage in an existing business, we would revisit the vision. Now, where do they see this business 3 to 5 years from now? And vision gets bandied about a lot by consultants. But really, it's not an esoteric exercise. It's a real stake in the ground that 5 years from now, this business will be double in size, doing business across all of Ontario through 20 outlets and generating X number of profit in dollars or EBITDA or whatever. So it's quantifiable and it's real and it's a goal. And then we build the plan to get them there. And that's really, so vision isn't something that's out there, it's really what you're doing this for. So in an existing business, we would go back and say, you know, are you on track to meet your vision, or do we have to recalibrate the vision to today's business climate and where we see the potential for the future? Coupled with that, we also start to talk about, if we get there, is that the end goal, or is there another goal after that? And you're not going to live forever. What's your exit strategy? Now, we build that in up front so that we know, you know, the entrepreneur that we started talking about, he may want to make $1 billion company. He may have Apple visions. He may have a job in mind and he wants to keep the business small, that he can manage it and, you know, make some money and move on. But it won't be scalable and it won't be saleable. So that person has to make their money along the way. Our real target are those people that want to build a business that is scalable and will take on a life of its own. So that's the vision part of it. And that's really important. So we'll park that for a sec. But also coupled with that, the idea has to have legs. So at the same time we're talking about the vision, we're starting to do a little bit of guerrilla marketing to make sure that there's actually a market for the goods or services or products that the entrepreneur has a dream is viable. You know, a lot of good ideas never get out of the gate. So it has to be viable. And we'll do whatever kind of research we can afford. It doesn't have to be, you know, the expensive market research, but we will find a way to get some idea whether this is viable or not. Not going forward is as good a decision as going forward with a good idea. Not going forward with a bad idea is equally a time saver. You know, we all watch Dragon's Den. We see a lot of bad ideas that should never have seen the light of day. So we will put them to that kind of acid test as well. And then we will build a plan. And we will incorporate in the plan all the typical financials, the pro formas and all that. But we would do a worst case scenario plan. You know, if things don't unfold the way they should, do we have the resources or access to resources to keep the business afloat until we can write it? You know, the most viable plan. And what happens if it takes off? What do we do then? A lot of businesses fail not because they aren't making money, they run out of cash.
Yeah.
So cash flow management. So we project, say, okay, what if this thing takes off? Do we have the resources or access to the resources to fund that growth, that accelerated growth? So that's all part of the financial planning process. And then today, people have a sense of purpose. So we have a client, he's green. He makes products, he sells products, but all of them are absolutely green. Almost, you can eat the product. It's food grade. And he's very proud of the fact that it's all green. So his purpose is to not damage the earth, as well as making money, and his vision is to grow the company, but he wants it done a certain way. So we talk about purpose if there's a passion for a certain way of doing business or an altruistic thing that is also coupled with why you're going into business. And then the other thing that's most important is, how do you want the people or the business to be perceived from a daily basis, the interaction? If I interact with you, am I going to have a pleasant, heartfelt discussion, or are you a cold, lowest price, the number's the number type guy or girl? So what's your mission? And for a one-man band, that's not as critical as when you start hiring. because you want to hire people that can support and buy into your mission and your vision, and emulate what you want this company to be. So all of that we incorporate into stage one to make sure we're setting the right foundation for the company.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's a pretty big stage one.
Yeah, it's very important.
But I guess it's the
very
most important.
Most important.
Because it's the foundation.
Yes.
So the next stage is?
The next stage. Well, the next stage is really all about work. We call it a job is born. And the business is starting to get some traction. People are actually giving you money for your goods and services. And you're starting to see some results from that. But this is where the owner or the entrepreneur really has to become an expert in the truest sense of the word. They probably have narrowed their focus. They've focused in on a niche in the industry that they're after. And they really truly have to become a go-to person, an expert in that industry. They have to know it. So much so that if somebody said, you know, if you want to know about financial planning, you got to talk to Joe. He's the guy. You have that expertise. The same thing for every entrepreneur. I don't know a business that's successful where the people that started didn't have a real understanding of what they were doing in their industry. In some cases, they're game changers. So that expertise and that hard work is sort of the foundation of stage two. But what happens now is, as you're getting traction, you got to start thinking about your brand. Not only the brand of the product or the service, but the brand of the company. How do you want your brand to be perceived in the marketplace? So I'll give you two brand examples that we all know. If I said Walmart, you immediately get a picture of the service you're going to get, the kind of assortment it is, what the environment's going to be like, and they live up to their brand really well. If I said Holtz, you get an immediate picture of what service expectations are, what the environment is, what the products are. Completely different, but both strong brands. Right? So somewhere along the way, you have to decide what your brand is going to be, or the marketplace will decide it for you. It's much better to have the impression you want created in people's minds, so that when people talk about your brand, when people talk about Plutus or Joe, they picture a guy that knows financial planning, is an expert, and is easy to talk to. Plutus can deliver consulting. You know, Holtz can deliver great quality products at a fair price, I guess. You know, so
the brand is it's the impression.
Yes.
It's the visual that people get.
Yes.
In the second that you said the name.
Yes.
That's the test, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And you want to articulate that brand so that you can embody it in every action you do, because the brand isn't what you say it is, it's what people think it is. So going back to your mission statement, if you're starting to hire people or associate with people that support your mission statement, they'll support the brand. They're hand in hand. And that's why that exercise is so important. Okay? So there's the expertise factor, there's the work factor, and the branding factor. And the fourth thing in stage two that we really start to hone in on are the financials. Now that you know the niche in the industry you're going after, what do good companies, great companies, achieve financially in that niche? What kind of return on investment? What kind of margins do they get? Whatever the metrics are for that industry, we need to know the top quartile performance metrics, because those are your targets. You don't want to be average. You want to aim for the best. So we need to know what those financial metrics are and put in place measurement tools to make sure that we're starting to look at our performance with that view. You're not going to get that kind of performance right out of the gate, but you need to know what kind of performance would be good in your industry. Profitability, you know, you can go on and on. But each industry seems to have its own idiosyncrasies, and we need to know those. So there's a financial component, a branding component, an effort component, and expertise. And that's really the differentiator of starting to position your business against your competition, because your brand will be unique. You're going after different financial metrics than a lot of companies that haven't done those kinds of analysis, and you're differentiating your own personal knowledge of the industry. So that's, in a nutshell, what stage two kind of looks like.
Okay.
Okay.
So now
Now stage 3.
Stage 3.
Okay, so stage 3 is really the graveyard of businesses. It's the most difficult stage for entrepreneurs to get through, and many don't. It's also decision time. It's go, no go. Because at this stage, the business is getting beyond the owner. There's so much business coming in, he or she can't do it by themselves. They have to hire people. Okay, hiring people starts to become the quagmire for the entrepreneur, because people need goals, they need direction, they need training, they need to know what their objectives are, they need some measure of autonomy to be able to do their job, and that's sometimes the antithesis of what an entrepreneur likes. They like to have their fingers in everything. So first thing we have to do in stage 3 is to point out to the entrepreneur that they're now a business person. They're becoming management, and that's a bitter pill for some of them to swallow.
They're becoming what they got ran away from.
Yeah, they're now doing what they ran away from, or why they started the business in the first place. So if it really bothers them, there's a couple things we can do. We can help them structure the business so that they can keep control over it. It'll never be huge, but we can keep it a certain size, and it can still be profitable, they can still maximize the return, and they can manage it. They'll have to make their money along the way, because at the end of the tenure, whatever they want to do with the business, it's not as saleable, or they won't get the same value for the business had it gone on to the other stages. But it still can be viable, and it's smarter to recognize what you truly are, what you truly wanted, or you turn the reins over to a professional manager, and the entrepreneur can continue to do what they're really good at. You know, many of them are very creative. They create products and they create ideas. Some of them are super salespeople, and they're the main rain catcher, the rainmaker for the company. They can continue to do that. A great ambassador for the company, but have someone else take over as general manager or president, whatever title you want, and lay the right foundation. Because in this stage, it's all about policies, procedures, guidelines, performance issues, and putting the right structure for the company to grow as an organization. By the way, this is where the culture of the company, which was formed by the mission statement, starts to evolve away from the personality of the owner. Up until stage 3 or middle of stage 3, the culture of the company is really the personality of the owner. But now that you start to hiring people, they're starting to have some influence on that culture. And that's why that mission statement, I keep referring to it, is really important, because you'll hire those people that support the mission statement. So even though the culture is evolving a little bit, it's still true to how it should behave every day. Right?
Okay.
Okay, so it's all about policies, procedures, structure, guidelines, autonomy, which is the real hard one. You got to let people, not without proper controls though. So we put in control measurements and give the owner some comfort level that people can't ruin. He can see what's going on. He knows how the company's behaving, and he has influence over it, but he allows people to do their jobs. So often you'll see the synergy is 1 + 1 is 1.5, because the owner's meddling too much. And really what we want is 1 + 1 = 3, right? And we get the best of both worlds. So stage 3 is the critical one, and even some very mature companies that we've been involved with are still kind of stage 3 companies. You can straddle stages. We see that a lot in companies that have been around for a while, but they have big issues around stage 3. And usually the crux of it is human resource management, structure and
staff. Is you hear the expression "growing pains"?
Yes,
is that
the
stage?
That's
where
exactly right. Exactly right. And what keeps the owner awake at night are usually people problems.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So, we can do stage 4 and then we can have a break.
Okay,
then
sure.
Resume.
Sure. So stage 4 is all about staying true to the structure you put in place in stage 3. And the owner can't say, well, we've always done it this way, because we're now doing it a new way. and there's a real penchant for the ownership to regress back into, well, this is what got me here, this is the kind of behavior that got me here. So we have to really caution that it's a new company now. It's evolving, and everybody has new roles, and we have to be true to that. And one of the things that's really important at this stage is to start to hone the quality component of the structure we put in place. We need to invest in quality management systems, computer systems, better financial reporting structure, and just instill in the culture of the organization a culture of continuous improvement. We just want to make ourselves better from a people management point of view and from the infrastructure that we have put in place. So it's all about making things better along the way, so that as the company continues to grow, we're continuing to grow with the company. A while back in my career, I had an opening, and HR called me and said, we've got the perfect person for you. Bob's been with the company 20 years. He's got 20 years experience. And I quickly responded back, I know Bob. He's got 1 year's experience 20 times. He's never grown. And so we don't want that to happen. We don't want people to stagnate with the company. We want people to continue to grow with the company. They'll find their own level of comfort, the old Peter principle. So, but we want to allow people to continue to grow. The way business is being done today is so different than even 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Well, you got to bring your people with you, and invest in the right kinds of tools that will support that. So we look at the financial reporting tools, we look at the quality management systems, marketing, all the executables that continually get improved.
Okay.
You take a break?
Just take a pause for 5 minutes, and we'll resume with Adrian Herschell after that. And we're back on the Cube Talk Show with Adrian Herschell, and we're talking about preparing a business. There's 7 stages that we're covering. We're now into the 5th stage. Yeah. So,
okay,
stage 5.
Stage 5. Stage 5 is where the business has gotten some traction and is really starting to get consistent results. And this is what we call the franchisable stage. And I don't mean that it's going to be a franchise in the McDonald's or Tim Hortons sense, but it's now replicatable. We can now expand the business in either, it could be a franchise model, but it could also expand their products into new products or new markets. If they're a local company, they can start to think about going beyond their existing borders. If they're a Canadian company, they can go international. And it can grow by expansion now. Up until this stage, until we've got some replicatable results, it's imprudent to expand too quickly. So at this stage, we can now look at taking on new markets and taking on other activities. And the keys to this stage now are putting in place the right people in the expanded markets and spicing in existing talent to make sure that the mission continues, that the behaviors of the company, the culture is still embodied in there, and that the policies, procedures, guidelines that were structured in stage 3 are implemented in all the expanded locations and or are perceived in the expanded markets. So that the brand stays true to its brand image. You know, the brand equity starts to take a life of its own. So when we think of the swoosh in Nike, there are people in marketing that say that that swoosh, that brand image, is worth $1 billion.
Yeah.
So a company brand is really important, and at the expansion stage, you want to make sure that we're absolutely adamant about adhering to that brand and making sure we protect it at all costs, because it's our lifeline. At the same time, you can expand and you can take on new markets and take on new activity. At this point, we also look at leadership, because the leadership starts to take on a slightly different twist at this point, because now we're going beyond our finger point reach. We have to be able to spice in secondary leadership that can manage those expanded markets and or geographical territories. It's more critical if the company is expanding locations as opposed to expanding product reach. So stage 5 is all about executing an expansion plan that allows us to start to maximize its potential. Back in stage 1, we set this vision. This is getting us close to the 5-year vision. And this will be the final layer that will enable us to reach that. So stage 5 is really important in terms of understanding how this company can grow and how fast it can grow. To not put in, and it's all about not putting in jeopardy the existing business. So we wouldn't want to expand beyond the financial capability of the company, but we might spice in a second layer of investment or infusion of capital, whether it's an actual investment, debt, it could be partnerships, it could be strategic alliances. So there will be some financial resources required to help support that growth. And we'll spice that in as well. But stage 5 is really starting to get fun because it's expandable again, and the entrepreneur, if he's still around, or she, will start to see some excitement again. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
They started at 1,
Yeah.
and they kind of go into hiatus
Yeah.
while all the changes happening,
Yeah.
and now they're back.
Yeah.
So this is about scalability.
Yeah, absolutely.
Primarily.
Absolutely. Yes.
And how well you could do that
Yes.
scaling.
Yes. Yeah, without putting anything in jeopardy, because we want to make money along the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after that,
Stage 6. So stage 6 is all about going back to the vision, because you're pretty close at this point. You know, if your vision was going from 50 million to 100 or 0 to 1 million, you should be close to that. And now we want to take a look at the organizational structure. Well, before I get there though, in stage 2 we talked about financial metrics. Understanding what the metrics were of a top quartile company. We pull those out now. We've been monitoring them all along, but are we achieving top quartile metrics? Because now we're a stage 6 company, we've had some traction, we've gotten some expansion, and we should be getting top quartile results. So we pull out those metrics and take a real good look at them and find out whether we're on track, and we are, or where we're not, and what do we have to do to get there. You know, so we analyze the margins, we analyze the return on investment, whatever the metrics are for the industry. I don't want to go, but let's make sure that we're starting to sparkle as a company, and we're hitting top quartile performance. You know, we've laid a good solid foundation, and we've expanded the company. Now we should be getting sterling results. So from a financial perspective, we want to make sure that we're starting to be the envy of the industry. and starting to position ourselves as a top quartile company. We're also getting some reputational brand equity as well. Competition is noticing us. They're paying attention to us. And our brand, because we've been true to it all along the way, has real value. So now at this stage, we have to look at the structure of the company, the organization. Because typically, the people that helped start it don't always have the same expertise to take it to the next level, the new vision, whatever that is. You know, we're starting to hit the old vision, but another 5-year plan's coming up. What's the new vision for this company? If we've hit the 50, or we've hit the 100, or the million, whatever the number is. What kind of talent does this organization need to take it to the next level? And in some cases, it may be continuous training of the existing people, but more often than not, we have to bring in subject matter experts at a different management level to help infuse the company with the talent that will take it to the next level. So as an example, the company may have started with a part-time bookkeeper and evolved to a full-time bookkeeper and to a controller. And now we may have to look at a VP finance because it's getting much more intricate. Or we've started with a marketing coordinator, and now we need a general manager of marketing or a VP marketing. HR may need another talent level because we've got diversity of locations. So we want to structure the organization to make sure that it can maximize its potential at that point too. So stage 6 is all about making the company sparkle from a financial perspective, excuse me, and a organizational perspective, that it has the right talent and the right level of expertise to continue to move the company forward. Yeah.
So now we're at stage 7. I think I know what this is.
Yeah.
The exit stage.
Yes. Yeah. Stage 7 is all about succession planning and maximizing the value of the company for the ownership team. And the exit strategy can be varied. It could be a management buyout. It can be going public. It can be a sale or merger. Or it may be succession planning for subsequent generations. But at this stage, we want to make sure that the ownership and their hard work over all those stages gets full value. So we're looking at succession planning from that perspective. But we're also looking at taking the company into new directions as well. You know, there may be opportunities for it as an entity to start to get into new directions. You know, if we look at some of the companies around the world, you know, Apple was a computer company. Now half its income comes from phones. GE was an appliance manufacturer. They have a whole division that's in the financial services. So there's opportunities for companies to start to look at going back to stage 1 with a new product, new development. So there's the ownership issue, and then there's the company direction issue. And we start looking at how do we deal with both. So stage 7 is really, from a people perspective, maximizing the value. And looking after the people that got you there too. Now make sure that they're continue to have employment and they're continuing to reap some benefit from that as well.
So the stage 7, I mean, there was a time when there was a time when people started a business and never thought about getting out because they just wanted to keep it and pass it on to their heirs and to their heirs, and they make an empire. Yeah. I assume as time, the last 10 or 20 years, that's becoming less and less. Well,
you'd be surprised. You're absolutely spot on. A lot of people start a business or start a company with no idea what the end game is. You know, they may know why they started it, either to run from corporate life or because they had a passion or an extraordinary idea, but they didn't think about how they were going to get out. And if they didn't get through stage 3, getting out for those kinds of businesses is very difficult because they really don't have value beyond the value of the assets or their book if they're in the service industry. So any owners of those kinds of businesses that hadn't taken their money along the way and we're looking at their company as their retirement package, which a lot of them do, they're not going to maximize the value of that business, which is why we're so adamant about getting companies beyond stage 3, because then they start to take on value. And the EBITDA multiple, if we use EBITDA as an evaluation tool, doubles and triples, 4 to 7. So if a business in stage 4 was worth 1.5 times earnings or 2 times EBITDA, it's 5 and 6 at stage 7.
Okay.
And that's the kind of, and so knowing that kind of performance criteria, and also knowing that there's going to be a number of businesses come on the market over the next 10 years as the baby boomers start to age. Getting maximum value for your company is critical today. Actually selling, so let me take a slightly different tact. There was a study done in 2008, so it's an old number, but it's still valid. There were 526,000 businesses listed for sale in the United States. Less than 1% changed hands for a variety of reasons.
1%?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that, well, I guess I can't say that's worldwide, because
yeah, you could extrapolate that to Canada, though. You know, so it's 2% in Canada. It's still all the businesses that are for sale. A number of them don't change hands. For a percentage of them, they're not viable as businesses. You know, there's nothing to buy. For a small number, they're way overpriced. You know, the owner has telephone numbers in his head, and he's actually getting street numbers. So there's a gap. But for a lot of them, they can't find the market. They can't find, and so as that continues to compound over the years, differentiating your business to make it saleable and viable for sale means that it has to be really valuable, that somebody wants to buy it. Yeah. Right?
Do you ever encounter people who, so say it's a relatively small company,
yes,
and they've run it for 10 or 20
yes,
years. They have children, but they don't want to run it. And they say, well, I could sell it, but I know everything in my head.
Yes.
If I were to take on somebody and show them over 5 years, 10 years, a transition, so that they basically learn the business, like,
yes,
like a mentorship.
Yes.
Is that something that you're seeing?
Well,
is that something that's viable?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, when we often help advise people that are looking at buying businesses, and one of the things we advise them to consider is to retain ownership, particularly the entrepreneur that has a lot of knowledge. Don't forget, in stage 2, they've developed their expertise. That has value. Sure, don't rely on them to drive the business. They're on their way out, but lean on them for mentorship, for guidance, for ideas, support. They've had experience. Absolutely. 5 years, 3 years, 2 years. The time frame varies, but it's absolutely part of the program to somehow retain that knowledge for a period of time in transition. Let's hope that it's not all in their head, that somewhere some of the information's on paper, and there's good financial records, and there's good strategies in place as well.
So just as well, this is probably a variable answer, yeah, but what's the time frame for these stages, would you say, as an average?
So we've seen companies go from stage 1 to stage 7 in 3 years, and they just rocketed through. But in general, it takes about 5 to 7 years to lay the proper foundation and transition, just because of the complexity of some of the things that have to happen. You have to start hiring people, and all that stuff. That takes time. But along the way, you can be making money and showing progress. From stage 2 on, companies should be, good companies should be making money. So this is where I differentiate between profitability and cash flow. They can be making money on paper, profit, and be running out of cash.
Yeah.
So we we're very careful in our financial projections to understand where the pressure points are. At what stage in the growth of the company is cash going to become a problem? And let's predetermine how we're going to raise the money or to have access to the money to continue to fuel the growth. No. But to answer your original question, a lot of companies don't understand the stages, so they get stalled. So they can be around 20 years and still be stage 3. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So we've taken some clients, and that's different from other consulting practices. We don't go in and do the analysis and hand them a binder. We actually stay with them and make sure they get through the stages. So it took us about a year to take a client from stage 2, 3 to 3, 4. But they never regressed, and they're continuing to move forward. And we're still involved with them on an advisory basis.
So we have a few minutes left,
sure.
But if somebody would like to contact you or your company,
sure.
If you'd like to give any
sure.
contact information.
Well, we have a website. It's plutusconsultinggroup.com. And my email is Adrian, Adrian, at plutuscg.com. And we have a corporate phone number, 905-278-7545. And we'd be happy to talk to anybody that is looking for some advice.
So are you based in Mississauga? Or?
One of there's 4 consultants in our practice. One of them's in Aurora, one's in Mississauga, one's in Oakville, and one's in Milton. And we handle clients in the greater GTA, from Hamilton right through.
Okay, so you have a pretty good range.
Yes.
Southern Ontario range.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on. And
thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure.
It's very good.
Yeah.
And so that's our show for this evening, the Cube Talk Show. And I haven't had shows for a couple of months, but we're back on for the fall. And if you'd like to see any prior episodes, they're on my website, www.joetheinvestor.ca. And my email, if you want to contact me, is joetheinvestor.today@gmail.com. And I've also launched a shopping page on my site, which is www.shop.joetheinvestor.ca. And that's all for today. Have a good evening.